Hey guys, Stealth here. Welcome to Wargame. It's a 3v3 on this very large and lengthy desert map. As usual, I have forgotten the name of the map. Anyway, we have, of course, over here this town. We have a large open area which is usually used for tank warfare and some infantry pushes along these tree lines. And then we have Charlie over on the left, which is a town, again a little bit of an open area, and yet another town. I'm using a motorized deck, to be precise, an eastern motorized deck. And with this I should have a lot of elite infantry to start pushing into India, but at least capture this town. That's going to be the primary job for the army over on that flank. To do so, I'm starting out with mostly infantry transports. I got some recon infantry, but don't be mistaken that these are just recon units. They do have recon capability, but I use them primarily as assault infantry, as these guys have the capacity to not only spot, but also use grenade launchers and or alternative weapons such as very high-end RPGs. A couple of Scott 2As with a bunch of more infantry. I believe that these are LSTRs, or that they are just the Motostrelchis. A Strop to finish it off, as far as AA goes, and a couple of these FLA MG 152Es. These are very outdated machine gun trucks, but I found them to be quite effective at supporting infantry against either transports or against other infantry. They have a decent suppression value, they have a high rate of fire, and they work really nicely that way. I'm also starting out with a Sokol and an Mi-35 to try and flank around this position. If the enemy is busy in India, and they usually are, then they may not detect my helicopters flying around and I can easily get a kill on Juliet, or at least that's the plan. First though, my primary focus is this town. I'm teamed up with Mr. Apple and Mons. Mons is going to cover the middle, Apple's going to take left, and I'm going to take Echo. We're fighting today against Andrew, Myrick, and Unsung Heroes, and our skill levels are all pretty equal. We're pretty much in the same league altogether. Now let's kick this thing up and get this thing going. There we go. Initial units are off. The first part usually isn't that interesting. There we go. I reached the town. Getting into town, and to some amazement I don't encounter anything. But there we go. We arrived exactly at the same time in the town, and we just basically weren't aware of each other until we stepped on another. And this is exactly when all of these guys are going to get their work done. Formosus with grenade launchers are chewing up the Canadian Airborne. The other group of Canadian Airborne has already been panicked. We got some more transports coming in, some more infantry support units such as the 163 CS. And I'm trying to flank around, but I get spotted by a longbow. My Sokol manages to get a couple of missiles into the target, but the longbow survives. At any rate, my assault here has failed. My assault here has all but failed. I have gotten quite far, but not far enough. And you can see the napalm is also still kicking up a bit of panic here. I'm trying to get all of the infantry out of the way, and Andrew with his US deck here really did not have that much to counter it with. My infantry is just of such a high quality that it is really hard to counter the infantry with grenade launchers or vehicles that are going to close in, because that is exactly what I wanted him to do. Close in and let me just take him out at short range. My Mi-35 gets taken out and my Sokol is not going to be long. By the looks of it, I got taken out by two DAPs over there. We still have the longbow operating over here, and he's just casually standing by until he gets taken out by the LSTRs. I'm not sure why Andrew wasn't pulling that thing further back, but there goes another 150 point helo. And as I noticed that the ADATS seems to be alone, and it is a 110 point unit, I just send out the Specialnies, and even if they don't use their RPG, they can still take out this unit. Time to bring in some reinforcements, although I don't have too many. I still have 20 Motostrelchi, I still have my infantry support units here, and the LSTRs are pretty much the battle group that got away easiest here. And I believe that I cleared out pretty much everything. I crushed the entire initial attack that was done by Andrew here. He just didn't have anything left. He did have 2 daps, and I was all too happy to see those daps come in, because LSTRs. 5 Iglas, 2 daps. If I can get a couple of hits, I can probably kill them. These things do have 6 HP. I only have 4 HE damage, so I'm going to have to hit them twice, which means they can only miss once. And unfortunately the daps don't actually stick around. Now we got infantry coming around from pretty much all angles. And this is something that really surprised me. These Scott 2 AMs are usually pretty terrible units. I basically only use them because they have a KPVT and they come with a Maljutka, but range is bad, accuracy is really bad, armor penetration is really bad. But sometimes you get lucky. That's another 110.8 ADATs done. We're leading by +2, +1 currently. And I'm actually saving up to get another CV into Elena, as I'm trying to consolidate my hold onto these sectors. Now you can see that immediately reinforcements are being brought in. And I'm going to have to defend myself against that, but I really don't have that much left. Over towards the middle, we have an engagement between Mirik and Mons. You can see that Mirik has brought out some really heavies. He has 3 Kiyomaru-Shikis, meaning that anything that looks like a tank or a vehicle is likely to get killed off very quickly by these heavies. He's also quite clustered up here, so cluster artillery would be really useful. Over towards the left, Apple seems to be in a bit of a standoff mode with Unsung Heroes. And one unit that we completely overlooked, we just did not know they had a unit here, is Kustjägde. Not just that, they also had a helo down here. Anyway, back to my flank. I'm going to conceal what they have. All I can see is V150s coming in, and of course they drop off Rangers. Now, Rangers are pretty highly trained units. They are elite, shock troops, as my Motostrelci are quickly realizing. Now, pay close attention to these little things. 10-point units, they do have 1 armor penetration. The closer you get, the more armor penetration they get. So this thing is taking out all sorts of vehicles, which you would reasonably not expect them to be able to take out, such as these things, 4-point transports, or transports with 4 frontal armor. I managed to do quite a bit of damage to the Rangers, but I am starting to run out of infantry. Trying to bring up the other guys I have over here, which is HGM infantry. And I thought that I had another 2 full transports. Well, that didn't quite work out. It turns out I picked up my Commandosi, and whereas I thought I had 20 Motostrelci, that was not quite the case. It is one standing commando from the Commandosi squad. So I realized that I am pretty screwed here. I'm trying to push in more forces, but of course it's going to take them a while to arrive. MiG-912A comes in, tries to get a little bit of napalm onto these targets, and it just does that beautifully. Suppressing and killing off all of those Rangers and putting the hurt on anything that might have survived. The thing is that these Hachi-Kiyu-Shikis are really, really dangerous. I don't have a lot that can kill them other than the LSTRs, but they are panicked. And my other position is being heavily pushed on by a couple of these infantry units. The Formosas can perfectly deal with the infantry, but these transports are a whole different issue. They will not be able to deal with those, so I'm trying to get them the hell out of there. These Concours are some of the best Concours units, they are, I think, what got me my most kills. Just this one lonely Concours squad. They just did an incredibly good job here defending against anything that looked like a vehicle. Missile goes in, Hachi-Kiyu-Shiki unfortunately loses sight of it, but I think the LSTRs may have killed it off. LSTRs against a whole bunch of panicked Korean infantry, Japanese infantry, and the LSTRs, although they don't even carry a machine gun, they can definitely kill these guys. Until another unit comes in. But there's the big advantage. Normally, if these guys would only be engaged with the infantry and they would have a machine gun, they would not be able to fire the vampire at the same time. Infantry can only fire 2 weapons at the same time. There comes another bombing run. Because I don't have a machine gun, they will always fire the vampire. And that's exactly what they did. In their last moments of glory, they killed yet another transport. And while the area is heavily on fire, there's still a lot of infantry, consisting both of Mirik's forces and Andrew. They were heavily reinforcing this position. And my infantry was, well, pretty much extinct at this point. I just didn't have anything left. The Conquerors is deterring anything that is wheeled or mechanized, and there goes another Avenger. As my tank is trying to desperately keep the infantry at range. The moment that they get into this town, I'm going to be in trouble. In order to keep them out of this town, I'm also using another cheap support vehicle, which is this thing. Just a 15-point recoilless rifle transport. And transport is probably not the right term, let's call it a half-track. Age 1963. But at this range, against infantry, they are remarkably deadly. We do, however, have a slight incursion in our base, in the form of an HKP-4C. We do shoot it down pretty soon, but I'm not sure how much they spotted. And we are assuming that we are still in risk here. We have a pretty solid +2 lead, so we're doing quite nice. The question is, can we hold on to this? And it's really going to depend on whether the enemy captures Ivan again or not. As Ivan is really costing them points at this stage, as well as Fedor. The fact that they don't have a CV in Fedor anymore is costing them. And together that's giving us a +2. Now I have more infantry that's trying to arrive here, and considering that nothing else came out of this tree line, I thought, well, it might be quiet, it might be desolated. Not so much. I ran right into a huge amount of infantry units here. And while my tank is trying to do a standoff fight against these Hachikiyus, the infantry is being offloaded, but it runs into all sorts of trouble. Nanion Shikis, infantry carriers with autocannons, even a Piphawk shows up, which gets immediately dispatched by the Seed aircraft from Mons over there. Unfortunately, he has to regret that. And one of the worst things that could happen to me at this stage was airstrikes. So I decided to get a few more AA units in here, such as the Romb. And I managed to get another drop in, right on top of the infantry. Those MiG-912s just did an incredible amount of damage. 2 puffs come in from Unsung Heroes. The Su-27PU manages to nail one of them. The other one tries to go for my Romb. Romb returns fire, loses, but I believe that we get both of them. He's popping flares, but he cannot pop flares against the just the sheer AA gun from the Strop here. There's still the Hachinana Shiki that was surviving, by the name of Yamamoto no less. One infantry transport's not going to really do much, so I'm trying to use whatever else I have here, and the tank is eventually the one that took it out. Over here we still have Hachikiyu Shikis slugging it out with Specialny Jetnotki, which are still miraculously hiding here. And our other Specialnys are fighting it off with more Rangers, but I really don't have a lot left. F-16 MLU comes in. I'm not sure why Unsung was trying to come in here, but the Nighthawk is the real issue here. The MLU, not so much. I lose one transport and pretty much half my Commandosis. A couple more missiles coming in from the Hachikiyu Shiki there. Luckily those Jumats, or yeah, I think that the Jumats, they're pretty slow missiles. They give you a lot of time to compensate. You can see that I'm trying not to get hit. I'm trying to keep the Scott 2 safe, and it is working. I saw a Super Heavy come in, so I'm trying to circle them with an Su-25K, trying to get one of those KH-25s on target. Unfortunately, I couldn't see it anymore. But oh, I think someone else took it out. Not sure about that. There's an M1A2 coming in. Aside from that, they have one command, very, very little amount of infantry, and a couple of AA units, and that's it. Aside from that, we got the DAPs coming in, the Abrams, an Avenger, and possibly some units, but they're going to take a while before they get here. So, looking at it like this, I could probably have pretty reliably pushed them out of this zone. The thing is, I just didn't know. I got a very, very cheap recon unit over here, a 15-point SPW-40A. DAP flies over and DAP kills the infantry. The infantry kills the DAP, but the DAP unfortunately crashes right on top of the Specialnies, killing yet another one of them. So time to get these Specialnies out of here, ASAP. In the meanwhile, I'm trying to keep everyone alive and resupplied, so I have a couple of colossus standing by, and especially these are critical. These concours have to survive, because they're the only thing that is really keeping my forces alive here. They're keeping all of the heavily armored vehicles away from here. Now, in a bit of a risky move, I just decided to deploy a CV. I have plenty of CVs in this deck, and by doing that we actually get a +1. Now, they know exactly where the CV is, so it's not going to last for very long, but every point that you get is another point that the enemy has to try and take from you. So, by doing it like this, while I am exposing them, I am gaining points for my team. Getting some backup here from Mons, he's deploying ASU 85Ms. I try to relocate the CV into a position that's a bit safer. Unfortunately, they seem to know exactly where it's going, and they're probably just simply spotting it. Decide to pull back the Specialnies to try and keep them alive. CV's parked again, there comes the Nighthawk, yet again, and Andrew nails the command vehicle. Another ATGM infantry being brought in. The Concours over here seems to be in the wrong structure, as from this structure over here they cannot actually fire at anything. That's why they're not actually doing anything about all of these vehicles that are coming in. Bit unfortunate there, I should have told them to attack sooner. But we also have other things in our mind. We have airstrikes coming in. Peace Pheasant gets hit, and unfortunately for them gets taken out, while the bombing run completely misses my units. All the Specialnies are still alive, and I'm trying to get them away from this position, so I can get them patched up and get them back into the fight. That's when I noticed the M1A2. Very, very dangerous unit, as I really don't have a lot to counter that other than my Concours or infantry at very, very close range. So I'm trying to get a missile in. And these Concours missiles are pretty damn accurate, and they do strike the tank, but the tank has so much armor that it just does not really care. It's down to 8 hit points out of 10, so I'm going to have to fire a lot more missiles into the frontal armor of that thing in order to kill it. Over towards the left, we have an offensive from Apple going on, and he's just driving tanks right into the enemy position here. You can see that the STRV-121 is not entirely well positioned here, as it can fire, but only at medium to short range. And with that tank over there and the supporting CV-90s, the push from Apple unfortunately does not quite work out. By now, the enemy has also parked another CV in Fedor, so we're no longer gaining points, but we are ahead by quite significant. We have 176 versus 90, so we're doing quite nice. And for some reason a Flying Falcon decides to fly right over my strop and pays for it with his life. There goes the wreck. We have another nice museum piece here ready to be picked up. Now the M1A2 was still sitting here, but I just could not find it. And that's because I didn't have any recon left. The recon units that I did have are over there. Other than that, I have no recon inside the town, so I'm actually pretty blind, save for the medium optics on the Commandosis, medium optics on the Concours, and another Concours squad over there. So time to bring in some more reinforcements. I get some reinforcements from Mons over here in the BMP-2D, and I believe I'm bringing in some... No, I'm not yet bringing in reinforcements. Here they go. I also got a Niwa coming in, and I'm firing with an RM70 at this position here. I'm not sure if I actually hit anything, but I believe that I do. Right at the time that Mons is trying to push in. Here comes the artillery. If I can somehow stun these things, or at least damage them a little bit, they are not going to be as effective. Unfortunately, that artillery barrage of mine is just not really doing anything. I think I aimed it slightly too far behind the position that they actually had. And had I put it slightly further forward, I probably would have done a little bit better. Perfectly executed smokescreen in the meanwhile by Mons. And he's pushing with T-64 BVs. Now at this range, they can, and maybe will, one-shot Kiyu Marushikis. First off, they're kicking out Mirek's Suzak Day over here. Got some cheap tanks rushing in. Just a T-55, takes out another recon unit. T-55, he does not have the infantry to follow up, they're still lagging behind. And here we go, engaging the Kiyu Marushiki next. Kiyu unfortunately will fire before the T-55 does. So Changsu 85 are also going to be quite the threat to the tanks over there. He should have pushed up further with the T-64s. Here we go. Closing in. Trying to get the shots in on the Kiyu. Kiyu, I think, died due to a possible side shot from the T-64. Now that Kiyu is being threatened, kills the T-72. But I think that this also got taken out by a side shot from the T-64BM. Last surviving Kiyu is currently slightly distracted. They're doing a one-on-one gunfight with 2-on-1 guns. Even if they are slightly inferior tanks at short range, they're going to really seriously do some damage. And this is a very, very well executed push by Mons here. He completely pushed them out, despite the fact that they had 3 super heavies there. In the meanwhile, my flank has been significantly reinforced by blue. You can see SMAWs, we have LVTPs, Canadian Airborne, Rangers, SMAWs, all sorts of AA units consisting of Avengers, ADATs, Mistrals. So flying in here is not really going to be an option. Trying to get kills here, or trying to capture the terrain, is going to be quite hard. Neo just shot down another aircraft there. Let's see if we can recognize that. Possibly another F-16. Yep, looks like a crash F-16 to me. Mons has pushed up. He has lost all of his tanks, but he got the objective. He got the CV dead, and we're again leading in points. The Mistral infantry over here somehow just gets completely overlooked until they manage to shoot down one of my jets, which I believe has happened by now. And that's when we suddenly become aware that the enemy still has Mistrals over here. Mirek pushes back with an M1A2 from Andrew, but they don't seem to bring any recon, so I think they might be rushing in blind. Yep, they really don't know much about the situation here. This does, however, pose a significant threat to our forces, as most of the forces that we had were dead. The Concours M can still do quite a bit of damage, killing off one K1A1. A K1 and an M1A2 are left, but without recon, they simply don't know where the tank is. The Chonmaho 4s at this point are quite useless. I mark up where the M1A2 is. We keep firing missiles. There is another hit into the K1. K1 unfortunately manages to pull back, and our recon isn't stellar either, but at least we have a T-55. Mons is trying to fly in with an Mi-24 VP. It starts to take a little bit of fire, but I think that a seed aircraft from Mons took out the AA gun that was shooting at it. More missiles coming in. That's my RM-70 battery fired, and it's discouraging this group from attacking any further. Did a bit of damage, and I don't believe it actually killed anything, although the Nano Yonshiki G has taken a lot of damage. MiG-27 comes in, tries to nail the M1A2 but loses sight. And unfortunately we don't really get a line of sight soon. Over to the right, I'm really not doing much. I'm trying to push my Specialnys back in. And I'm trying to support them with mortars. I have a couple of mortar batteries over there consisting of 4 prams. I'm also reinforcing my position, because my position is stronger than theirs. They don't have any terrain to fall back to. I do. I could fall back to this tree line if I have to. And I still have a lot of town to fall back to, should I need to. I also reinforced the town with FJB 40s to bolster my AA efforts a little bit. And I'm just trying to shell whichever I can see. And there's quite a lot to see here for me. These Avengers, the LVTP 7A1s are getting shelled. And in the meanwhile, Apple is still skirmishing over on the left. He is making progress. And he has managed to get a foothold, but of course it is quite easy for them to still manage to try and push him back out again. So he's struggling there. Unfortunately, we were all struggling. Down the middle, we were pretty evenly matched. Mons was trying to slug it out against Mirik and some tanks from Andrew. Over towards the left, Apple was doing a one-on-one with unsung heroes. Over towards my position, I'm still dealing with the infantry and basically the garrison because I'm actually attacking. From Andrew and Mirik, and trying to get all of these guys killed off is a lot of work. LSTRs are now facing off against Stormers and they are pushing through. We still have a +1, so Blue 4 at this stage must be getting really nervous because they still have 16 minutes left to get a lot of points. And this is really when we need to start reinforcing this flank. To be honest, I should have helped out here. I should have assisted with more units than I actually did. And unfortunately my napalm came slightly too late to prevent the infantry here from being killed off. Although I doubt I could have done a lot against the bomber, which was again the Nighthawk. We do, however, know that they don't have a lot of forces left. So we're pushing in more Formoses. Specialnies are still there as an Overwatch unit. But it seems that Mr. Apple still has not much in the sense of reinforcements to push through. He's pushing through some more BMPs, and there is something to be said for the infantry over here. He could have pushed up. If that would have failed, though, the enemy would have pushed back hard, and they would have nothing to stop it with. Now you're going to see me try something similar and almost pay very, very dearly for it. I'm lining up with a bunch of infantry. I've got 6 transports with 6 squads of infantry inside, just basic Modestrelchis. And this is when the Concours again are trying to kick ass, and they are doing a great job at it. This is still the Pola group. Just 2 guys, and they are kicking anything that they may see. There goes another Grizzly. Now destroying the Grizzlies itself is not that valuable. But by destroying the Grizzlies, you get a small explosion, and the explosion is valuable. It's going to stun or temporarily panic vehicles that might be operating nearby. So this Bradley didn't get hit, but it did get worried. The other Grizzly definitely got panicked. Unfortunately, another missile flies off into space, by the looks of it. As I'm still using these Specialnies as recon operators. But there's not that much to see. The thing is, if I push across the hill, I immediately get shot at. Now, if you're playing this map, always beware. Beware of your reinforcements. My reinforcements kept coming up through this road, then took a right at the crossroads and kept going. Which means that they were open to attack from this position here. This tree line. Be very aware if that is the angle that you want your infantry to take. If not, then make sure that you send them up through this route instead. Firing off a few more mortar rounds, trying to get the Canadian Airborne. Of course, my lead was terrible. The Canadian Airborne are still trying to get the Specialnies over here. The other Specialnies are trying to rush back, trying to get back into safety. And most of the time they're just sitting out here, not doing much of anything. Over towards the left, Apple has reinforced the town. And while he is pushing into resistance, he seems to be pushing through the resistance. These Stormers and the NM135s are doing quite a bit of damage, but he seems to be just soaking it up and keeping the push going. IKV 105 fire supports. These are great units. You just don't need to park them right next to the enemy. Because while they are good at long range, at short range they tend to be killed off pretty soon. The rest of the units is basically fire support, basically filler material. So here comes the Moderna, trying to clear up all of that filler material. In the meanwhile, we're still leading by +1. We've got almost 300 points at this stage. There goes the Moderna, killing off another transport. And I gotta say, Mr. Apple did a really, really good job here trying to push through. In the meanwhile, talking about pushing, I'm kicking right into this tree line with pretty much everything that I had that I had set up here. I'm using tanks, infantry, the fire support vehicles, the transports, anything I can get my hands on. But this is where disaster strikes. This is where it all goes wrong. You can already see the bomb has left the aircraft. That is, if Wargame would let me render it accurately. There it goes. As my infantry is slugging it out, they are still trying to disperse. They're still trying to advance. Here's the F1. The Nighthawk. There's the bombs from Nighthawk. Watch the amount of damage and carnage that these things cause. Perfect split, by the way, which is quite unusual with a Nighthawk. Usually drops 2 bombs very specifically on one position. Splash. That was the end of all of my infantry. That was an incredibly well executed attack. And unfortunately my infantry was too close together and they all died. The tanks are still in a pretty decent fighting condition. But without infantry escorts, they're not that likely to do well. They can, however, push through the Suzac Day, the Avenger, possibly the ADATs if I get lucky. And over on the right, I'm also pushing up. And I'm basically using everything that I had in this town. I'm using the ASUs from Mons. I have my own FGBs, my Scots, even a CV is pushing in. This, by the way, is something that you can definitely employ yourself. I don't have cover for the CV and I want to get another +2 or another +1. So I'm just putting up a smoke screen. Because by the time that I'm hopefully clearing out these smalls, or by the time that I'm done clearing out these, that's when the smoke will have dissipated. So by then I can push up the CV closer and get into an actual cover position. Suzac Day are losing to a transport. ADATS is killing off vehicles that are operating here. I'm trying to get close enough. Unfortunately, I lost another OT-64 to a couple of CSs. T-55 kills another CS. Missile almost hit the ADATS, but unfortunately misses in the last possible second. Concours getting ready to fire. Fire his last missile too at that, which they were firing at the same target and it missed. Kolos is empty. These guys are out of action. I'm trying to get the smalls finally killed off because these guys have done an incredible amount of damage. And I really don't have a lot to do it with. I got a couple of tanks, one of which is heavily panicked. The other is a fire support and the last one is only worried, but not particularly accurate. There's the Avenger, there's the ADATS. The question is who's going to pull the trigger first, and it is the ADATS that wins. Finally gets taken out by, I believe, the Concours missile from this Concours squad. And that pretty much seals the deal for Blue 4, as they have nothing. However, we lost everything on both sides. They still have a little bit of infantry, 1 AA unit. I have a little bit of infantry left. I have reinforcements already standing by. But that's it. We just completely mitigated each other's forces like that. Over towards the left, this zone has now been mitigated. We have another +2 from Gregory, thanks to Mr. Apple. And Fedor is no longer being counter-capped. So I have a +4. We're gaining points very, very quickly now. And this is pretty much the end for Blue 4. I'm trying to do yet another push with the infantry here. Trying to get the CV out of the way somehow. The Abrams kills one of my transports. I'm also pushing in with some helicopters here, which are immediately getting nailed by the Mistrals. And not just that, we also have an Avenger. One helo goes down. The Mi-35 tries to return fire, but does not get a good shot in on the Avenger. I'm trying to push in on the Mistrals because these guys have to go. There's more infantry on the way. Blue manages to recapture Gregory, albeit temporarily, and they still leave us at a +2 only. If I can get this CV killed, then I can finally get another +1 going in. But unfortunately my CV was forced to retreat because the Canadian Airborne kept coming in. So I'm trying to use my transports at long range as fire support units, but I lose sight of them and I cannot do anything again. Fielding a couple of OT 810s to do more fire support and to present cheap targets that the enemy is usually happy to take. Transports pushing in, infantry pushing in. Still only have a +1. Mr. Apple here has a lot of forces. A couple of BMPs are still standing by in reserves. And towards the middle, there's not too much action going on at the moment. Now whatever's left of my infantry, Mostrelki 90 for Mons and my Mostrelchis, well, they're not doing very well. They're pushing into a whole load of infantry. And unfortunately I seem to have completely forgotten the fact that I have artillery standing by. So the mortars are quiet, whereas they should have been pounding on this force the entire time. We're now currently at a +3. The CV apparently has died. I believe that was due to the Ondava fire. I believe, yeah, Mr. Apple's Ondava fire probably killed off the CV all the way over here. That means that we're at +3. We only have a couple minutes left. And you usually see desperate pushes at this stage. And talking about desperate, I was getting desperate. I did not have a lot of forces left. My Modestrelchis are trying to clear this position. I'm trying to push my CV into cover to get another +1 going, so I have +4. But I almost rushed them right into the Canadian Airborne. I'm pushing way too far ahead with the CV. So I'm trying to discourage these guys from firing by firing at them instead. Unfortunately, the Canadian Airborne do not even see my infantry yet and they nail another CV. But a +3 really kicks in. A +3, that's something that you're really going to notice. +1, you can live with. +2 gets annoying, +3 is deadly. And that's exactly what you can see here. The +3 just keeps dripping in at a pretty damn good rate. And unless you do some sort of massive counteroffensive, which by the looks of it is coming in, Andrew's trying to fly around with 6 Cobras, unless you get some sort of very good kill very quickly, or manage to somehow neutralize the +3, you're basically screwed. Especially if you're this close. And that's exactly what happened here. They lost the game, but this was one hard-fought victory. As far as the teams, Andrew lost a bit more than he killed off. Same for Merrick, same for Unsung Heroes. Apple did a great job, 2,300 in kills, 1,200 in losses. Mons did very, very well. And I got most kills on the team, but also the most losses, because we just kept throwing infantry at each other. Kill list is unfortunately not available, because I kept switching from viewpoint to viewpoint. But I gotta say, I really, really enjoyed this gameplay. Lots of action, lots of move and counter move, and that's exactly what I enjoy in Wargame. So I hope you enjoyed that game too. If you did, please give it a like. If you have any questions about the Wargame setting as a whole, let me know in the comments down below. And otherwise, if you have any game that you would like to show off on the channel, send it in through the link in the description. Be sure to give it a good description of its own so I know what to look for and why your replay specifically should be covered. And with that, the more accurate the replay, the more likely I am to cover it. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you soon for the next video.